Well, hello again. We're back. I hope you've had a chance to, take a break, grab a cup of coffee, come on back in the classroom now and have a seat. And we're going to continue from where I left off. You remember I was discussing the results I had found using the Milan Behavioral Health Inventory with regard to coping abilities. Okay? Uh, no difference in the coping ability of the individual who has too much weight compared to the one who is within his or her weight range. So there's no difference in coping styles, okay? Well, Milan provided us with some additional testing that I found interesting. And both he and I were interested in studying if coping mechanisms are not that important. Could the psychological attitudes of individuals be of some importance here? Well, what are those psychological attributes, and attitudes that we might well look at here? One of them is chronic tension. Do obese patients carry more constant tension inside of them than those who are not obese? Also, do they react differently to stress that occurs recently? Something that is just now occurring. Do they react differently than those who are within the normal rate range? Are they more pessimistic? Do they tend to look at life more drearily, negatively? Well, you'd think if you're going to carry 250 pounds more than you should, you might think, my God, with all that weight, life looks black, at least gray, okay? Future despair. Along with that, do I have a general feeling of just giving up and walking off the roof of a building? Because I feel so terrible about the future and the way I feel about myself. Social alienation. With all this weight I'm carrying, do I have a real shyness of getting involved with people, and do I develop a standoffishness, and do I find myself internally and externally kind of pushing away, alienating myself? Do I have a sense of internally am I alienated even within myself in terms of how I express myself? Okay, social alienation. Somatic anxiety. Well, I'm sure most of you at least know that you can carry a lot of problems around and they end up having an effect on your organ systems. It's called somaticized psychological problems. Somaticized meaning body. I'm beating myself up here, internalizing just an awful lot of psychological distress, emotional distress, and it finally begins to manifest somatically or physically. Okay? Somatic anxiety. Fat people any different? We'll check. No. Chronic tension. They look pretty much like everybody else. Carry about the same amount of emotional tension inside of them. Stress levels, chronic stress. Okay? Recent stress. No. They don't appear to respond to stress any differently than anybody else. Pre-morbid pessimism. You think that they'd be pessimistic, but they don't test as if they're pessimistic. They don't look pessimistic. They don't stay in a closet all day and then come out for half an hour and eat and then go back in the closet. They're not that pessimistic. Okay? Future despair. Do they look at, the world like it's This is the end of the world? No, they don't look any differently than normal. Social alienation, they don't test as though they're more socially alienated than anybody else, nor do they seem to carry a lot of emotional distress or anxiety internally so that it actually begins to show up physically. No, don't see that either. Well, maybe we take a look at another set of scales that Milan provides us, and that is, do they have psychosomatic tendencies that we can't see? Allergic reactions tend to be emotionally loaded. Emotions actually exacerbate allergies. Gastrointestinal susceptibility, my field. And do people with gastrointestinal problems from the soft palate all the way down to the anus, rectum, have psychological issues here that express themselves in gastrointestinal disorders? You bet. Cardiovascular tendencies, and that is, do heart patients display a psychological set of characteristics that can contribute to and even cause cardiovascular disease? Of course, I've spent 15 years in a cardiology center, cardiac rehab, building a behavioral medicine program with cardiologists and cardiac rehab nurses, okay? So I'm very familiar with cardiac patients and the effect of psychological distress on their conditions. I run support groups, I run a lot of other things besides that, but I spend, and I continue to spend, a lot of time with heart patients. Okay, you bet. Psychological characteristics affecting cardiovascular function, okay? Any difference? No. Couldn't see any difference statistically between my groups. And do they have a tendency to respond to kind of painful situations any differently than normal? Do they react to life threat differently? So, this could be it. And do they appear to be emotionally more vulnerable, very sensitive? They're very emotionally upset about things and happy and expressive, but it's really right out there. They're very vulnerable, and they let you know that they are vulnerable because they tell you. They break down and cry, they get angry, they're very emotionally expressive. Whoops, you got to be careful around them, okay? Be very careful that you don't upset them. Any changes? No. 1, 2, no pain treatment response difference. They're not reacting to life any more threateningly than normal, and they tend to not be any more emotionally vulnerable than the rest of us. Okay? Wow, no difference is real interesting, huh? Well, where do we go from here? Well, I want to mention something to you. What we have here is a study that I completed and actually presented a few years ago at the World Congress on Obesity in Stockholm. Okay? The relationship between obesity and coping styles, psychological and psychosomatic characteristics, and predicted emotional reactions. Those who are obese compared to my control group. Okay? So you'll probably see that in press here if you read this kind of stuff at all. Anyway, it's going to be out there. So there's something else I want to tell you. It's a study here, one of many, but I only bring this to your attention here because it illustrates something that I want to emphasize again. It's a study entitled, "Is the Assessment of Coping Capacity Useful in the Treatment of Obesity?" And that is, does it make any difference if we try to determine whether or not the individual copes differently than normal in predicting obesity? Does it actually, if you have a coping style, does it actually predict obesity in a person? No. A rather large, exhaustive study. First thing in conclusion, we found no evidence that coping styles predict obesity or are causal. No predictive value at all. Okay, that's scary. Okay, what they did find, however, there were some psychological characteristics like an elevated depression and some anxiety, tendency to kind of worry about their physical condition, hypochondriasis, and a little elevated HY, that hysteria, denial kind of thing. Gosh, worry about it, put it out of my mind. Wow. You know, if you're carrying around 250 pounds more than you should, how do you live with it? Become anxious for a little while when you see yourself in the mirror, move away from the mirror, and try to forget it. So what we're looking at here, most likely, is a set of characteristics that arise when you realize, I got this weight and I can't lose it, and the hell with it. Okay. Wish it were that simple. So you get the idea. Where do we go from here? Okay? Well, in Obesity Part 3, I'm hoping that I can dig us out of this. How do people actually learn to become obese, remain obese, and cannot change? Okay? Thank you, Mother and Father. Thank you, Home Life. Thank you, watching Mom and Dad eat, behave, and I copy you. Remember, we're social animals. Bandura and Walters, social learning theory, if you want to go back and take a look at some of that stuff, or never did, how we actually imitate our parents, how we imitate others in order to incorporate those same behavioral patterns into what we can call our self-image. We imitate, we model others from here to about the time you're 12. Then cake's baked. Okay? Learned everything I need. Mom, thanks. Dad, thanks. I'm out of here. It's called adolescence. Okay? Don't tell me nothing anymore. I've already learned everything I need from you. Now I got to start hanging out with my buddies over here. Okay? I got to graduate to the next level. So that's what happens in childhood. Parents teach children to be them. Regardless of whether you're obese or not, that's how we learn. Okay? Modeling and imitation. Thank you. I've never seen a really heavy set of parents with a set of anorexic kids, okay? Or really slender kids. I haven't seen that. What I do find is interesting. You know, UCI over here, Southern California, okay? It's my private practice across the street. And Southern California is a vacation destination. Probably know that. People come here from all over the United States. What? For the entertainment value of this area here. Come from all over the world, okay? All you have to do is go to one of these venues that appeals to families and just sit down on a bench and watch what passes by. Sounds cynical, but it's a cavalcade of fat. Wow. Americana. Scary. So we have a woman here who has 2 or 3 kids that are trailing her, and a husband over here who is, she's 350 pounds. He's, not Mr. Slim. He is carrying a lot of weight too. And they're all having a wonderful time here. And she has about 4,000 calories in this hand here. And she's smiling, interacting with everybody, having a great time in this outfit that is just about a bikini, okay? And loves the way she looks in it, okay? Now, really, okay? She feels good in shorts, close to a bikini, with about 4,000 calories in one hand, and is carrying about 250 pounds more than she should. And really having a good time, very social, talking, everything. In fact, if anything, she's the center of attention, okay? No social alienation. I don't see future despair in this family. I don't see pessimism in this family. I don't see anybody who's carrying this kind of weight who is attempting suicide at one of these events. They all seem to be enjoying themselves and behaving just like everybody else. What's going on? The only thing that they tend to be really very sensitive about, and ask the partner who lives with an obese spouse, you talk to them about their weight and they really get mad. Okay, touchy subject. We don't talk about that. But for the rest of the time, life is great. I just pass by the mirror real quickly and change my garment size 3 or 4 times during the course of the year. So I have something to wear if I do lose a little weight here, but if I put it back on here, the end of the closet, I got all this stuff here. So we adapt. Trouble is we adapt to our weight, and we don't know how to lose it. Okay, so where do we go from here? It's a real problem. Whether it is a weight management program you're in, or whether you are a kid in the middle of Michelle Obama's effort to change eating habits in school, bringing on different menus, addressing the whole issue of obesity in a kind of an educational way in the schools. If you don't pay attention to what I'm going to be talking to you about in the future, my concern is that no matter what you do, it ain't going to work for very long, because there's something else going on here that I want to talk to you about next. And it has everything to do with habits. How we acquire them, how we maintain them, and why we can't break them. Talk to you soon.